Hello everyone, I'm Brian from Watch Complications. Thanks for continuing to watch this particular series on making custom watch dials. This is part 6, and we're going to talk about cleaning up the dial that we printed in the previous video in part 5. So again, just as a recap, we've been going through a process from just all the way back in part 1, the sort of methods that you might be able to use to create a custom dial. In part 2, I talked about custom 3D printed dials and how I kind of go about that process. And video 3 showed you my pad printer setup. Then we talked about dial prep in part 4. Part 5, we just printed the ink and design on the dial surface. And now that we've got it printed here in part 6, we're going to talk about how to clean it up and kind of get it ready to go into the watch. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. My link to Instagram is in the information below. Also, check out my blog at watchcomplications.com. Okay, so let's clean up a dial.
Okay, I want to show you a neat little trick. You might notice that there are some black smudges on this side and that there aren't any around on this side. That's because I just cleaned this side and I have yet to clean this side. And whenever I pad print, or you pad print, you might get some blurriness or marks around some of the numerals or markings. And you can quickly clean that up. You can see there's some right here. I just take a Q-tip. There might be other things you can use. And I just dip it in a little bit of rubbing alcohol, just regular isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol that you would have in your house. Put a little bit of it on the Q-tip, not a lot, just a little bit. And what I'll do is very, very lightly rub across the surface. Now, you shouldn't get too much. You want to just very lightly do it, and you'll notice that those markings just slowly sort of disappear. You just want to be careful. You don't want to go heavy on it or push heavy on it, but those smudges and markings will come right off. It'll give a sharpness to the image as sort of the excess is moved away. It's one way you can make things look a little bit sharper. And so what I'm doing is I'm going around on the black, which I just printed, and removing those marks. Now, one thing I'm going to have to do is touch up a little bit of white around the date window, which is fine. I can do that with my pad printing paint. So basically I'm adding definition by removing the excess from the printing marks. And this is a homemade dial, so I also like giving the impression that this is an actual custom one-off dial. This isn't made in a factory, and so it doesn't have the same level of, I guess I could say, cookie cutter perfection. Every dial is unique in some little way, and that's good. It's not bad. There's a little mark on the end of the L here, and I want to clear that off, and that little notch should come off before anything else because it's thinner than anything else. And the key with this is just to be patient while you're doing it. Don't push hard on the dial, don't rub hard, and eventually you'll see progress. Like that. There is one mark down here that needs a little bit of work, but again, that's okay if it's just one. And if I'm looking at it under magnification, it's also going to be a little bit different to the naked eye. Cool little trick. It will take off just a little bit of the white, but not much. Again, if you don't press it hard, it won't. Okay, so here I have the dial. I have the blue and the black both printed. I've taken very carefully with a little bit of rubbing alcohol any of the smudges off, so the printing's all pretty crisp and clear. There's one marker that had an issue here between the 6 and 19. The lower half is a little bit smudged, but that's okay because it'll be hidden inside the case. Only about half of these markers show in reality, and so that's okay for this particular type of a project. Again, half of the markers hidden by the case. So that's fine, and everything's going to get clear coated, but now I'm going to put the logo on. And again, these are very, very tiny laser etched pieces of metal. And so this is going to go on at 12 o'clock and then my 10.6 under it. And so now you're going to be able to watch me do that. I do this in a couple of videos. I'm going to do this in this video for this custom watch, but then also for my Wonderland series, you'll see me applying the logo to another watch. So this is something you'll see me do a couple times if you watch my series on custom watch builds. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is take the paper backing off of this. All right, there we go. So now I have the logo. And of course the goal with this is to get it exactly where I want it. Get it nice and centered, so get it on the set of tweezers that I want. So I'm going to apply this logo, and yes, I apply them by hand. I do this under magnification so I can, visually get it centered about exactly where I want it. And then I'll move it around and tweak it and things like that. But part of making a custom watch by hand is this particular part of the equation. One of the things I'm looking at on this particular one is distance from the markers right around the 24. So is it centered with 24, and then also those markers on the left and the right of it. All right, that's exactly about where I want it, and I'm just going to press it down a little bit with the end of this hand remover tool, actually. So I'm visually centering this, and for my custom builds, if it's not, to the thousandths, perfect, that's fine. This is a one-off custom build. It's visually centered, and it's going to look nice. As is, and you can get pretty close visually anyway. I mean, it's not particularly hard, I guess, to get it, roughly centered visually when you're looking under magnification. So I do the best I can visually. That's okay. Now I actually have the 10.6 separate on a separate logo paper. So let me get that. All right, so you can see this is tiny. And same process. I want to get it as centered as possible visually. And then I am going to coat this dial. I'm actually going to do a matte UV resistant clear coat over the whole thing. And then I may do a polished final coat, we'll see. This sort of work is quite tedious, or can be quite tedious. Though I guess all watch work really is tedious. All right, that's exactly where I want it. Again, same process. I'm going to use this tool just to push down on it. It's sort of a non-abrasive tool. Just make sure that the adhesive that's on the back of those logos gets some good contact. And then, again, I'm going to use a matte finish to sort of, one, even out the entire surface and sort of the look, since the paint gets a little bit brushed up from the rubbing alcohol and whatnot. And then if I want to clear coat it, I will, for like a polished look. All right, so that's the dial with the logo applied. I'm going to do a little bit more tweaking on the date window here just to kind of even out the white around it, but I'm going to clear coat it now. I'll show you pictures in my blog post, kind of these different stages. So I'll clear coat it, use a matte clear coat UV resistant spray, and then maybe after a couple of coats of that, I'll put on maybe a polished kind of acrylic clear coat on top of it. Basically, I'm going to seal this up so that if it was to get any sort of moisture, or of course it's going to be in the sun here and there, that it's somewhat UV resistant, and also that it is nice and protected in terms of the paint and the surface.
Thus concludes part 6 in our Making Custom Watch Dials series. As I think about this particular series I've been doing and using this particular GMT project that I'm doing for a customer, I will probably do some more of these going forward with different types of dials that have, whether it's the final production dial is actually 3D printed, or other types of materials and surfaces, color combinations using loom. I'll probably continue showing different aspects of custom watch dial making as I continue making videos for the channel. So don't think that at the end of this series it's going to be sort of the end of it. I'll keep showing sort of new and different things in my projects as we kind of go along. Don't forget, you can also look at some of my other watches that I make on my Etsy store. It's called 106 Watches, and you can also find the links to that below in the video information, and also on my blog, watchcomplications.com. You can find access to all sorts of pictures and information and links to my Etsy store and all that. So what's coming along in part 7 is a view of the final product. The dial's done. I'll put it in the watch case and put the hands on, and you'll be able to see then the overall design and concept of the watch. One of the things you'll also be able to look at on my blog is sort of my initial sketches, my 3D printing designs, and I'll kind of walk through the entire process of building this particular watch with photos and a little bit of textual information. So if you check out my blog, and I'll link to it in the video information as well, or subscribe to my mailing list on my blog, you'll be able to get updates and know whenever I publish that sort of walkthrough in a textual and visual way on that. Again, thanks for joining. I really appreciate all of my followers keeping up with me. Ask me questions, participate in the comment section. Happy to respond to you and give you any other information or pointers if you're trying to do this yourself. So I hope you've enjoyed this particular video in the series, Making Custom Watch Dials, and one more to go.